In 1513, a visionary mind named Niccolo Machiavelli meticulously documented 5 profound psychological techniques. These weren't mere theories. They were observations of raw human nature, so deeply rooted that even modern psychology still grapples with their uncanny ability to bypass our rational defenses entirely. Machiavelli, a keen observer of the Renaissance era, spent years watching how powerful princes captivated entire populations, transformed adversaries into allies, and astonishingly, persuaded people to embrace their own subjugation. These insights were initially confined to secret manuscripts, never intended for public gaze. Yet, what makes them so compelling to modern understanding is their profound reach. These 5 techniques operate on a neurological level far older than logical thought itself, tapping into primitive brain systems forged for survival over millions of years, not for resisting sophisticated influence. When Machiavelli penned the timeless words, "It is better to be feared than loved," he wasn't offering a moral judgment. He was unveiling a fundamental psychological truth, a mechanism that renders humans predictably susceptible to influence. We see these principles at play everywhere. Steve Jobs harnessed all 5 to cultivate Apple's fervent, almost cult-like following. Political campaigns strategically deploy them in every election cycle. Your own boss might unknowingly use several of these, shaping your perception without conscious intent. Even those who believe themselves immune to manipulation often fall prey, precisely because these techniques operate beneath the threshold of conscious awareness. The true power in understanding these isn't about wielding them for ill, but about recognizing their operation. Psychology doesn't fear you'll learn these because they are morally questionable. It fears you'll learn them because once you grasp their inner workings, you become virtually impossible to manipulate. You begin to perceive the invisible threads behind every interaction, every persuasive message, every dynamic within your relationships. As Machiavelli himself sagely warned, everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. In the journey ahead, we will illuminate Machiavelli's 5 principles of influence, aspects that psychology textbooks often overlook. We'll explore not only what they are, but the precise neurological mechanisms that grant them their potency, and crucially, how to recognize them before they are ever used against you. So, I ask you, are you prepared to awaken to what others cannot see, or will you continue to walk through life, unaware of the subtle forces shaping your daily decisions? Before we delve into Machiavelli's first technique, it's vital to understand the crucible in which he forged these profound psychological principles. What I am about to share will fundamentally alter how you perceive every conversation, every advertisement, and every relationship for the rest of your life. In 1512, Machiavelli found himself imprisoned and subjected to torture by the powerful Medici family after their return to power in Florence. During this harrowing captivity, he observed something that revolutionized his understanding of human psychology. His captors were employing specific, insidious techniques to break down prisoners' methods that had little to do with physical pain. The truly shocking revelation was this: these techniques worked on everyone, highly intelligent individuals, those with formidable willpower, and people who considered themselves psychologically unshakable. They all succumbed in predictable patterns. Machiavelli realized he was witnessing the systematic exploitation of universal human psychological vulnerabilities, inherent weaknesses that every person possesses because they are hardwired into our very survival programming. This is the truth that often remains unspoken. You are not manipulated because you are weak or unintelligent. You are manipulated because you are human. Your brain, refined over millions of years, evolved to respond instantly to certain triggers without conscious analysis. When an ancient predator charged, there was no time for rational deliberation. The brain developed lightning-fast shortcuts, rapid response patterns that completely bypass logic. Machiavelli discovered that these same survival shortcuts could be artificially triggered to guide human behavior, not through overt force or obvious coercion, but through psychological techniques that feel natural, even beneficial. Consider the last time you purchased something you hadn't planned to buy, or agreed to something you didn't truly wish to do, or found yourself believing information that later proved questionable. You likely believed you made those decisions rationally. They possessed an unparalleled ability to excavate people's deepest wounds, their hidden fears, and their secret aspirations. Simply by observing a flicker in their micro-expressions, a subtle shift in their posture, or the unspoken language of their eyes. They rarely attempt to persuade with pure logic. Instead, they employ Machiavellian methods to make you feel as though voting for their candidate was entirely your own idea. And here's where it becomes truly unsettling. Most individuals employing these techniques don't even realize they're doing so. They've absorbed these principles through cultural osmosis, training, and trial and error, without truly comprehending the profound psychological mechanisms they are exploiting. Now, let's unlock Machiavelli's first principle of influence, a profound insight that empowers you to see the world with new eyes. Machiavelli's first principle, which we can call the velvet glove, is the art of making force feel like kindness, of subtly guiding behavior through perceived benevolence. In 1502, Machiavelli observed Cesare Borgia masterfully using this technique to control the city of Romagna. Instead of conquering through obvious violence, Borgia offered protection from other regional threats. The citizens, desperate for security, begged him to station troops within their walls, believing they were gaining safety when, in reality, they were willingly surrendering their autonomy. The neurological mechanism that makes the velvet glove so compelling and often impossible to resist lies in its exploitation of what psychologists term reciprocity bias, combined with threat amplification. Your brain is hardwired to feel indebted to anyone who helps you during a crisis. This survival instinct evolved because early humans who cooperated and aided each other in dangerous situations were far more likely to survive. But Machiavelli discovered a chilling truth. You could artificially engineer the crisis, then artfully position yourself as the indispensable solution. This technique unfolds in 3 precise steps. 1. Subtle threat. Introduction. The influencer doesn't create obvious danger. Instead, they subtly make you aware of problems you hadn't even noticed. Phrases like, "I've been thinking about your situation, and I'm genuinely worried about," or, "You know what could happen if," or, "I'd truly hate to see you get hurt by," are deployed. Your brain's ancient threat detection system immediately activates, even if the danger is vague, distant, or unlikely. Your primitive survival programming treats all potential threats as immediate and serious, demanding attention. The unyielding trigger was always betrayal. Not just any betrayal, but a profound violation of trust by someone the empath had completely relied upon, cherished, and protected. In case after case, Jung documented the same harrowing scenario. The empath would uncover infidelity, a devastating financial betrayal, or insidious emotional manipulation from their closest confidant. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. People pleasers expend colossal energy, condemning and suppressing their own legitimate needs, boundaries, and authentic responses. But this creates what is known as shadow rebellion. In the immediate aftermath, these patients did what empaths typically do. They said nothing. They absorbed the crushing pain in silence, blaming themselves, trying even harder to be the perfect partner, child, or friend. But then came the moment that changed everything. A pivotal instant that Jung termed the clarity event. This was when the empath's unparalleled pattern recognition finally overwhelmed their ingrained, often self-destructive, need to believe the best in people. It was a true psychological awakening, a shattering of illusion that unveiled an unvarnished reality. Most people, and certainly their abusers, would expect an empath in such a moment to collapse into tears, to scream in anguish, to fall apart in emotional chaos. They were prepared for a torrent of raw emotion. What transpired instead was something far more terrifying to everyone involved. The empaths became unnaturally calm. Jung documented this as the precise moment when an individual finally integrates their formidable analytical capabilities with their profound emotional intelligence, forging a new, unshakable inner core. Even in toxic relationships, this dynamic often plays out, with one partner constantly identifying external or internal threats to the relationship, then positioning themselves as the sole individual who truly understands and protects the other. To recognize the velvet glove in action, pay acute attention to conversations where someone makes you aware of a problem immediately before offering to solve it, especially if that problem wasn't a concern to you prior to their mention. These empaths were, at long last, using their extraordinary gift of complete perception, not to excuse destructive behavior, but to illuminate and expose it. Jung's observations echoed ancient wisdom. There is no fury like a soul who has finally learned to trust its own undeniable perceptions. Jung realized this profound pattern wasn't about vengeance. This was what he termed shadow integration, the pivotal moment when an individual stops denying and hiding the powerful, often suppressed parts of themselves they were taught to conceal. The empath's shadow wasn't inherently evil. It was their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength, their righteous anger, and their inherent right to assert boundaries. When they finally integrated these essential aspects of themselves, they became what Jung called psychologically complete. Machiavelli's second principle is emotional anchoring, the systematic manipulation of feelings to completely bypass rational judgment. Here's the profound neurological mechanism. Your brain makes fundamentally different decisions depending on your prevailing emotional state when a choice is presented. When you're anxious, you tend to prioritize safety over opportunity. When you're excited, you often choose immediate rewards over long-term benefits. When you're feeling grateful, you're inclined to reciprocate, regardless of pure logic. They cut contact with toxic family members without emotional drama or lingering guilt. They rebuilt their lives meticulously, on their own terms, guided by their inner compass. He realized that what people-pleasers have been conditioned to call selfishness is, in fact, self-respect. What they fear as mean is actually profound honesty. What they label as difficult is nothing less than authentic existence. The deepest fear isn't becoming a bad person. It's discovering, with a liberating gasp, that you were never as bad as you thought. The individuation process for people-pleasers involves what we call shadow integration, consciously reclaiming and re-embracing the parts of yourself you've disowned. Imagine a skilled negotiator who intentionally keeps the other party waiting just long enough to create a subtle undercurrent of anxiety, then opens the discussion with an unexpected, generous concession, shifting them into a state of grateful relief. This emotional transition makes them far more receptive and agreeable to subsequent proposals. Jung's profound fascination with these empath cases transcended mere professional interest. He was deeply disturbed because he recognized something profoundly familiar in their transformation, something that mirrored his own arduous psychological development. Jung himself was, by modern standards, what we would now call a highly sensitive person. He understood the empath's journey from the inside out. He knew the quiet pain of seeing what others couldn't, of feeling what others wouldn't. These cases forced him to confront a disturbing, urgent question. What happens when empaths stop being society's emotional shock absorbers and begin to use their extraordinary gifts strategically? Steve Jobs utilized emotional anchoring in every product launch. The meticulous build-up of anticipation, the dramatic reveals, the immediate call to action precisely while excitement peaked. None of this was accidental. Apple customers weren't just buying products during emotional highs. They were forging positive emotional memories about the entire purchase experience itself. Political campaigns deploy this technique systematically. They rally powerful emotions around perceived problems, then present their candidate as the undeniable solution while feelings are running high. The decision to vote feels emotionally right, even if the logical arguments are weak. Sales professionals are taught this as emotional selling. Create the feeling first, present the options second, and ask for commitment while emotions are at their zenith. In toxic relationships, emotional manipulation is central. One person learns to trigger specific emotional states in their partner, then makes requests or establishes new relationship rules, while those emotions are strongest, exploiting their partner's vulnerability. Jung realized something that made his blood run cold. These empaths hadn't become less empathetic. They had become perfectly empathetic, which, in a chilling corollary, meant they were also perfectly strategic. They could, if they chose, manipulate others with the same effortless precision with which they had once been manipulated. They understood human psychology at a level that made them nearly omnipotent in social interactions, capable of orchestrating outcomes with an almost supernatural foresight. But emotional manipulation, as potent as it is, can be subtle compared to Machiavelli's third principle, which literally rewires how you perceive reality itself. In 1506, Machiavelli documented perhaps the most psychologically dangerous technique he ever witnessed. He watched in awe as Pope Julius II convinced an entire city that war was peace, that widespread destruction was actually progress, and that their profound suffering was, in fact, a glorious victory. Machiavelli termed this controlling the narrative, but what he truly uncovered was reality distortion, the systematic manipulation of perception to make people believe their experiences mean something entirely different from what actually occurred. Here's the terrifying neurological mechanism. Your brain doesn't store objective factual memories. It stores interpreted memories. Every single time you recall an event, your brain subtly rewrites and reconstructs it based on your current understanding, beliefs, and emotional state. Machiavelli realized that if you could control how someone interpreted their experiences, you could literally reshape their fundamental understanding of reality. This technique operates through three psychological phases. These empathic transformations didn't happen in isolation. Their ripple effects were profound. Jung documented how their changes impacted every system they had been a part of. Family dynamics, once locked in dysfunction, collapsed not because these individuals actively destroyed them, but because they simply stopped enabling the pathology. Alcoholic family members were forced to confront their addictions without empaths serving as convenient emotional dumping grounds. Depressed relatives had to seek other, healthier sources of validation. Manipulative siblings could no longer use these transformed empaths as psychological punching bags. 2. Selective emphasis. The manipulator skillfully highlights certain aspects of your experience, while minimizing or completely disregarding others. They will intensely focus on evidence that supports their preferred interpretation, while treating any contradictory evidence as unimportant, irrelevant, or even a misunderstanding on your part. This exploits what psychologists call confirmation bias, your brain's innate tendency to notice, remember, and prioritize information that confirms existing beliefs while filtering out or dismissing contradictory data. 3. Reality reinforcement. The manipulator consistently refers back to their interpretation as if it is an established, undeniable fact. Phrases like, "as we discovered," "when you experienced that challenge," or "like you clearly realized during that difficult period," or "remember when you learned that valuable lesson," are used. Your brain interprets this consistency as powerful evidence of truth. The more frequently you hear the same, unchallenged interpretation, the more real and solidified it becomes within your memory, effectively rewriting your past. Steve Jobs mastered reality distortion so completely that his employees famously coined the term reality distortion field, RDF. Jobs could convince people that impossible deadlines were exhilarating challenges, that missing product features were elegant simplicity, and that technical limitations were actually deliberate, brilliant design choices. Abusive relationships often thrive on reality distortion. He began quietly studying other empaths in his practice, developing what he called the Integration Observation Protocol, a framework for understanding how this breathtaking transformation occurs naturally. Cults perfect reality distortion by creating closed information environments where only approved interpretations are available. Members' doubts are reframed as spiritual tests, their discomfort as purification, and their desire to leave as weakness or loss of faith. Corporate environments often employ subtle reality distortion. Layoffs become right-sizing, wage stagnation becomes investment in company growth, and increased workload becomes an opportunity for professional development. To recognize reality distortion, pay close attention when someone consistently provides interpretations of your experiences that primarily benefit them, while subtly dismissing or invalidating your own understanding of what truly happened. Ask yourself, am I being told what my experiences mean rather than being allowed to decide for myself? Trust your original emotional reactions and internal understanding before someone tries to explain why you should feel or think differently. But reality distortion, while powerful, often requires sustained contact. Machiavelli's fourth principle is even more insidious, for it can manipulate you using people you've never even met. In 1508, Machiavelli witnessed the most psychologically elegant manipulation he ever recorded. He observed Lorenzo de' Medici controlling an entire population without speaking to most of them directly. Instead, Lorenzo expertly manipulated a select few key influences, then allowed the fundamental currents of human psychology to do the rest. Jung wisely noted, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." When someone's request irritates you, instead of immediately saying, "Yes," you bravely explore what this reaction reveals about your authentic needs. You learn to say, "I need to think about that," instead of reflexively agreeing. You practice, "No, but I can offer this instead," creating space for creative solutions rather than total self-abandonment or complete rejection. You develop the profound ability to disappoint people without feeling like you've committed a grave crime. Jung's groundbreaking work with these empath cases created ripple effects that continue to this very day. He realized that empaths weren't mentally ill. They were, in fact, evolutionarily advanced individuals, living in systems often designed to exploit their profound gifts. Jung began seeing empathic sensitivity not as a disorder to be cured, but as a crucial psychological capability to be properly understood, honored, and fiercely protected. 1. Influence, concentration. The manipulator doesn't attempt to convince everyone. Instead, they focus their efforts intensely on a small number of people whom others naturally watch and emulate. These might be formal leaders, popular personalities, or simply individuals whom others respect and imitate. Lorenzo de' Medici would invite respected citizens to private dinners where he would subtly share his perspective on political issues. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that if the wrong people learned how to deliberately trigger empath transformation, this immense power could be weaponized, turning a force for good into a tool for control. Jung scattered his observations across multiple private journals, never publishing the complete findings during his lifetime, a testament to the gravitas of his discovery. 2. Consensus amplification. The manipulator makes their position appear far more popular and widely accepted than it actually is by ensuring that the voices of their influenced individuals are disproportionately visible and vocal. Simultaneously, dissenting opinions are skillfully isolated, minimized, or actively discouraged from public expression. This creates what psychologists call pluralistic ignorance. Most people privately disagree with the apparent consensus, but they assume they are alone in their disagreement and thus remain silent. 3. Bandwagon acceleration. As more and more people publicly adopt the manipulated position, even if reluctantly, it becomes progressively easier for others to join in, because the perceived social proof appears increasingly legitimate and undeniable. Your brain interprets this growing, visible consensus as irrefutable evidence of truth, regardless of how artificially that consensus was initially created. But Jung also warned about what we call transition loneliness, the often challenging period between losing relationships based on people-pleasing and attracting relationships based on authenticity. This phase can feel deeply isolating because you're no longer willing to settle for pseudo-intimacy, yet genuine connections take time, courage, and discernment to develop. They don't need to convince everyone directly. They simply need to make their position appear more popular than it truly is. Social media platforms, often inadvertently, have perfected social proof weaponization through likes, shares, and trending algorithms. You're not just seeing information, you're seeing what appears to be popular information, which your brain instinctively interprets as socially approved thinking, a powerful nudge towards conformity. You develop what Jung called relationship with the self, an internal sense of wholeness, resilience, and belonging that no longer depends on external approval. They can't be broken because they've already journeyed to the deepest depths, faced their shadows, and emerged stronger, more resilient, and more radiant than ever before. If you've experienced this sacred shift from being needed to being chosen, it's a testament to the fact that real love found you when you stopped performing for it. The most beautiful aspect of this profound transformation is that you become capable of the very thing you were always seeking through people-pleasing, authentic love. But now, you receive it because of who you are, rather than despite who you are. Your authentic self, including your boundaries, your needs, your sometimes difficult truths, becomes lovable, because you have first learned to love it yourself. Jung's research revealed that most empaths, when pushed to their absolute breaking point, choose integration. They don't become cruel, they become precise. They don't lose their hearts, they gain unshakable backbones. The transformed empath becomes what Jung called love with boundaries. Someone who can care deeply, authentically, and protect themselves absolutely. This transformation creates a powerful ripple effect. Jung believed that individual transformation creates collective transformation. When you stop people-pleasing and courageously embrace authenticity, you don't just change your own life, you give others unconscious permission to do the same. What we call the authenticity ripple spreads outward from your transformed relationships. People in your life witness someone saying no with grace, setting boundaries without aggression, and caring without self-sacrifice. Remember where we started. Jung's documentation of a psychological pattern so disturbing, he called it the most terrifying transformation in human nature. These were not isolated cases. They represented a fundamental, undeniable truth about empathic psychology. Jung's research unveiled something that still makes many psychologists uncomfortable. Empaths aren't naturally victims. They are naturally powerful. Society simply teaches them to suppress that inherent power in the name of being acceptable, of fitting in. When empaths finally snap, they aren't breaking. They are awakening to abilities they possessed all along, now consciously wielded. Jung's case files reveal the truth that manipulators desperately don't want you to know. The kindest people are often the strongest people, because kindness without strength enables dysfunction. You stop enabling others' irresponsibility by always accommodating their needs. This gently forces them to develop their own capability rather than depending on your endless flexibility. Jung understood that society is transformed one individual at a time. Each person who chooses authenticity over approval creates sacred space for others to make the same courageous choice. Your recovery from people-pleasing becomes a profound gift to the collective unconscious. But Jung also warned that this responsibility can subtly become another form of people-pleasing if you're not careful. The goal isn't to transform others, it's to steadfastly maintain your own authenticity, regardless of others' responses. The ripple effect happens naturally, organically, when you live from your integrated self. The most profound ripple is what we call permission granting. Your authenticity gives others unconscious permission to be real as well. In a world often veiled in masks and performances, your courageous willingness to be genuine becomes a revolutionary act. You model that it's profoundly possible to care about others without abandoning yourself, to be kind without being weak, to have boundaries without being cruel. This is Jung's vision of individuated humanity, conscious beings in authentic, deeply connected relationship. This brings us to the conscious choice. Jung understood that recovering from people-pleasing isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing, sacred practice of conscious choice. Every single day presents countless opportunities to either revert to old, comfortable patterns or to bravely maintain your hard-won authenticity. What we call the daily practice of authenticity becomes your guiding path forward. This practice involves countless micro-choices that seem small, almost imperceptible, but create massive transformation over time. Jung's research leaves us with this profound question, a call to destiny. Not whether empaths will transform, but whether they will do it consciously, with intention and courage, or allow life's inevitable betrayals to force it upon them. If you're ready to embrace your authentic power and become the integrated empath Jung so meticulously documented, then choose conscious transformation. The world doesn't need more broken empaths. It needs more awakened ones. And Jung's timeless research proves that this transformation is not only possible, it is, in a profound sense, inevitable. The empath will snap. The only question is, will you direct that immense power, or will it direct you? Choose wisely. You learn to say no in ways that honor both your sacred needs and others' inherent dignity. This isn't about becoming hard or uncaring, but about becoming clear, honest, and truly loving. Jung believed this consciousness represents human evolution, the development of human beings who can love without losing themselves, care without depleting themselves, and connect without abandoning themselves. It's not selfish, it's integrated, it's whole. The ongoing challenge is maintaining this consciousness during stressful periods, when old, familiar patterns feel safer, when someone is upset with your boundaries, when conflict feels too difficult, when the lure of approval seems easier than the path of authenticity. These are the crucible moments that truly test your commitment to individuation. But Jung observed that each time you choose authenticity over approval, you become stronger, more resilient, and more deeply integrated. The pathway that once felt terrifying becomes familiar. The responses that once seemed impossible become natural. You develop what Jung called psychological backbone, an inner structure, a core strength that powerfully supports authentic relating. This doesn't mean becoming inflexible or unable to compromise. It means compromising from a place of conscious choice rather than compulsion, from strength rather than fear, from wholeness rather than wound. You can negotiate and collaborate while powerfully maintaining your essential self. If you've learned to hold your ground while staying open to others, you've learned to bend without breaking. Jung's vision for the individuated person includes the profound capacity for what he called creative adaptation, responding authentically to life's ever-changing demands without losing contact with your repeated, core, immutable self. This is mastery-level consciousness, fluid yet grounded, responsive yet boundaried, caring yet self-protective. The daily practice becomes less effortful as it becomes more deeply integrated, but it never becomes unconscious. Consciousness requires ongoing, mindful attention, but this attention, this presence, transforms from a burden into a profound joy. After this journey, you will stop pleasing people, but not because you've merely learned techniques or strategies. You'll stop because you finally understand what Jung knew in his bones. People-pleasing isn't kindness. It's self-betrayal, disguised as virtue. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That sacred privilege was always available to you, a birthright, but you traded it for the illusion of safety, the fragile promise of love, the fleeting hope of acceptance. Now you understand that real love, the kind truly worth having, can only come to your authentic self. The people you inevitably lose when you stop people-pleasing weren't truly loving you anyway. They were using the performance version you meticulously created to avoid rejection. When that performance bravely ends, a vast, beautiful space opens for people who can truly appreciate the real you, your boundaries, your needs, your sometimes difficult truths, and all the radiant facets of your being. This is not easy work. Jung understood that consciousness comes with a price. You'll face resistance, you'll grapple with guilt, and you'll endure the discomfort of learning to simply be yourself in a world that often preferred your mask. But the alternative, continuing to betray yourself for others' comfort, is no longer acceptable. You weren't born to manage others' emotions. You weren't designed to carry responsibilities that aren't yours. You weren't created to be liked at the expense of being real. Jung saw through this grand illusion and offered a different, more courageous path, the path of becoming whole. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you honor the deepest, most sacred part of yourself. Every boundary you set with love creates invaluable space for genuine connection. Every no you speak from your truth opens the door for a truly meaningful yes. This is your individuation journey, not perfect, not always complete, but profoundly conscious. You are learning to love others without losing yourself, to care without depleting yourself, to be kind without being weak. If you want to explore more about developing the self-awareness to truly read others while maintaining your unwavering authenticity, delve deeper into Jung's insights about psychological discernment. Your people-pleasing days are over. Your authentic life begins now.